Hello, Homeworthy, it's Robert. Welcome to my apartment here in Washington Heights in New York City. Come on in.
You're watching Homeworthy, where we believe every home has a story.
My name is Robert Fodor. I'm the VP of Sales and Concierge Services for Daniel House Club, and you are here in New York City in our apartment. We were looking for an apartment for a couple of years to buy, and we really wanted to live in a classic New York City co-op. And this building is a cooperative. It's one of the things that my husband and I really enjoy about living in New York is that there are these cooperative living situations where it's not just an apartment, it's not just a condominium, it is part of a community. And I think that's one of the things when I came into this building, I just had a feeling about it, that I just knew that this was going to be home. When I came into the apartment, I felt the same way. The apartment did not show very well. It was actually quite old. There was a lot that needed to be done to it. As we'll see when we go through the tour, some of the things that really attracted me to the apartment were just the classic architecture, also the view, which you'll see eventually. So welcome to our living room. We have a lot going on in this room, but it is truly, arguably, my favorite room in the apartment. I like it for a variety of reasons. Our bedroom is also one of my favorite, but this room in particular, because this is actually kind of the heart of the apartment and of the home. This is where we do entertaining. This is where we have people over. This is where we have dinners. And so I wanted this to be a showcase of really color, texture, form, and function. I think function is really important because I think a lot of people get caught up on the actual form of it and kind of lose the functionality of it. And in New York, space is at a premium, so you have to have function. You just have to. Just want to initially talk about is this particular piece of artwork. This is actually a piece of artwork that was bought at auction, at the Human Rights Campaign auction in Washington, DC. We did not purchase this. It was actually a gift from two very dear friends of mine. And he had it hanging in his home in Georgetown in Washington, DC, at the top of his staircase. And every time I would visit the house, I just loved it. There was just, again, something that spoke to me about it. I like self-portraits. I like the color, everything. And so when we bought this apartment, our friend who had this in his home in Georgetown, when I went down and visited them just randomly, he had this wrapped up and waiting for us as our housewarming gift. Also, it's a primary color. I mean, even though it's gold, it actually acts as yellow in this room. And so you'll see throughout the course of this tour, I respond very well to bright primary colors. This piece of pottery, my husband and I affectionately call the Stewie head. Family Guy, if you're familiar with Family Guy, it looks like Stewie's head. However, it's actually a piece of pottery and ceramic that was done in a way to make it look almost like lava, sort of like a lava finish, I guess is what you would call it. The artist's name is Josh Herman. He's based in California, and I absolutely fell in love with him. And so I bought this piece, and then I also bought these pieces over here, which are smaller pieces, but also complement very nice. And they're the same texture, from the same collection, the same year, etc. These pieces, these are big guys. These were pretty crazy moving into this apartment, and actually every apartment we've moved into and lived in. These are individual aerated concrete structures that are on a 9-foot steel pole with a rather large steel base. These were designed by Jonathan Adler. These pieces in particular really spoke to me. They're called the Temple Reform Screen. They actually are 3 individual pieces that you can see. We have had them displayed together as well as displayed individually like we have now. Next up is this sideboard or buffet. This actually was designed by George Nelson, who was the creative director for Herman Miller for about 20, 30 years back in the 60s and 70s. Just a prolific designer and somebody who I have a lot of admiration for, not only in form, but also functionality and design. You'll see here a lot throughout our apartment, you'll see a lot of wood, and particularly wood that has a lot of grain to it. That speaks to my Scandinavian roots. I love wood. I love rich, dark, brown, grainy wood. There is something that's very grounding, that's very comfortable and familiar to me about that. The lamp is a Stifel lamp from the 50s with the original shade, which is unusual to find, and a beautiful metal diffuser. Again, another really hard to find thing. But I just like the kind of simple design of this lamp. It wasn't extravagant, it wasn't anything large and huge. It just fit this space perfectly. And then these are actually, these two pieces of pottery are licensed reproductions from the 1960s from Italy, and we actually carried them at Design Within Reach. This piece is actually from a ceramicist in California, and I bought it from one of my good dealer friends, Lisa Cliff, who's out in Pasadena. And then next is, and certainly not least, are the Alexander Girard Mexican folk art dolls. These were licensed by Vitra, and Alexander Girard, to me, is somebody who, I know I've said that I like to emulate a lot of folks. I like their form, I like the function, I like the design of what they do. Alexander Girard, to me, is the pinnacle. He was also a creative director at Herman Miller for many years. He has a collection in New Mexico, which is where he ended up living in his later years in Santa Fe. 200,000 pieces of Mexican folk art in a museum. There's an entire wing dedicated to Alexander Girard. These are some of his most favorite. And again, Vitra licensed these and they reproduced them based on the original designs, the original colors, and Girard gave his blessing for these. I love them. I think that they're so unique and different. I came from a design background. I was an interior designer and obviously still am an interior designer by trade. I wasn't always an interior designer. I actually worked in the legal profession for about 15 years as part of my first job and first career. At the age of 39, I basically was sitting in the middle of my bed crying, going, what am I doing with my life? And why am I doing this? I need a creative outlet. I need something that I'm really passionate about. And as a child, I loved designing my own room. My parents gave my sister and I a budget as well as materials to use, and we created our own rooms. And so interior design was something that really was passionate in my life. Also, my grandmother, who was Swedish, and my other grandmother, who was Croatian, both had this sort of not only eclectic, but also very classic vision of interior design. So my maternal grandmother, the Swedish grandmother, she had a lot of wood tones, a lot of Danish and Swedish furniture. And my other grandmother, my paternal grandmother, who was from Croatia, she loved color and she loved texture and she loved more of the bohemian type of interior design. And I really lopped onto that as a little kid. And so when I designed my own room, it was all about that. I wanted form, I wanted texture, I wanted color, I wanted weird stuff, things that had a little bit of a kitsch value, as well as things that were just more classic and refined. And so when I have approached all of my, not only my clients, but also my own homes, I always look for that. I keep things grounded. As you can see in this apartment, all of the walls are off-white. That is sometimes a big no-no to a lot of interior designers. A lot of them just think, oh, how boring. I like to accentuate things with color and with texture and form, just the form of things that are very organic and interesting and really draw attention to it. So you're not really drawn to the walls, you're drawn to actually what's on the walls, and you really can showcase that. And I have always approached all of my design that way, ever since I started out in design, which also came at a really fortuitous moment in my life and also in a very fortuitous way. Our dining area, it's part of our living area. The dining table you've probably seen before. It's designed by Eero Saarinen. It's called the pedestal table, or sometimes called a tulip table. This also, just like the bureau, is palisander rosewood. Absolutely beautiful finish. And the chairs are Eames DCMs, which are dining chair metal DCM. And those are also in palisander wood as well. Herman Miller actually used to do real rosewood back in the day, but it became a very rare and endangered species of wood. So they started using what they call palisander, which has a very similar finish, feel, look, aesthetic. And I actually really love it. I think it's absolutely gorgeous. The candles I thought were obnoxiously large, and I love them for that. My husband hates them, but that's okay. We put them on a Lazy Susan so that we can actually just turn it like this if we want to, and it doesn't block his vision when we have somebody sitting across from us while we're sitting here entertaining. The footed vase is actually from the same collection as the pottery over on the buffet. This is also a licensed reproduction from Batozzi, Italy, from the 1960s. And then I have this lovely little piece of tile that was actually, I just placed inside of the footed bowl because I just like the little pop of color there. These pieces of artwork are very, very cool. They're actually serigraphs. They were distributed by Raymore Company out of Lambertville, New Jersey, back in the 50s and 60s. They were designed by an artist named Robert Bouchon. He was an artist, and he was also somebody who greatly enjoyed decor and interior design. So he kind of had that bridge between the two. And these serigraphs, he actually designed all of the designs for them and then put them on Belgian linen as a sort of silk screening process. I absolutely fell in love with the design of these, the color, the messaging around a sun being bright and warm and inviting. I just really, really loved. And you'll see throughout the course of this tour, sun and sun-related things are very common themes in our apartment. So these are two big focal points. And then of course we have the Herman Miller George Nelson cabinet, which matches the buffet. Thin edge, again with the beautiful white knobs. And this actually holds all of our records. And you can see, actually I have this one that I just bought recently, Air. I actually just saw there, and I bought this on eBay just recently because I actually loved not only the album itself being a picture disc, but also their show was just so fantastic. And I saw that show back in the day and then saw it again at the Beacon Theater here in New York. Just a great place to have all of our records. And then our friends who actually bought us or who gave us, I should say, that painting, also bought us this beautiful turntable as a housewarming, which was really lovely. And that's a lot of fun as well. So I like listening to vinyl, super important to me. I like the grainy feel. I like the sound of it popping and cracking in a speaker. So yeah, just really great. These lamps are actually what they call mushroom lamps. They are also made of real rosewood. We have one on this side of the room, one on the other side of the room. This is a glass shade. It's a frosted glass shade. I wanted ambient lighting in here rather than directional lighting. And I just really like the simplicity of these and the fact that it could easily fit in between two very large pieces of art that are also, really out there color-wise. I just wanted something very simple and clean. These were made by Laurel in the 1960s. And I just love them. This book is actually a compilation book of Julius Schulman's work. Julius Schulman was a prolific mid-century modern photographer. He did work all over the country, actually all over the world. And I just have a lot of admiration. He actually signed that copy of these books when I met him at, I think, the age of 96 when I met him. And he died just recently. But I love them. And then, of course, also the book of The Art of Color next to it, which speaks to basically my whole design aesthetic. Moving over here. So We have two lamps that flank either side of the sofa. These lamps I wanted to be, again, obnoxiously large and huge and tall. These are almost 4 feet tall each. They were made by a company called Design Techniques by an artist named Lee Rosen, who was the principal designer. They started actually as a ceramic company here in the Greenwich Village in New York City in the 40s. And Design Techniques was the company that actually was formed around that. So also the pieces of pottery that are on the ottoman, as well as these two lamps, are both, and all of them are from Design Techniques and designed by Lee Rosen himself. These are not the original shades. I actually had the shades made through a company called Jack of All Shades, which I love that name, but they do custom shades and they're fantastic. So I had these shades made to match because I did have the original shade for one of them, but it was in pretty bad condition. So I had both of those made, and I just love the way it flanks either side of the sofa, and really they're both focal points of this room. A couple of things about some of the ceramic pieces. This sun, again, we're talking about the sun, the theme of the sun in our apartment. It's all over the place. This was done by an artist named Paul Bellardo. Paul Bellardo was one of the very first ceramicists who won the Louis Comfort Tiffany Scholarship Award. So quite a prolific ceramicist. He studied at Boston at the School of Fine Arts. And I found that at a shop in San Francisco and absolutely fell in love with it and had to have it. It's actually a nom de plume of the two founders of the company's names, Curtis and Jerry. But they kind of made it Jerry, J-E-R, with a little accent over the E. These are from their very early collections. These are resin pieces that they designed. Their whole ethos and their motto behind doing decor items was that they wanted to bring gallery level items to the masses. And again, you'll kind of see that theme in our house. Like a lot of it is not, gallery quality or gallery level, but it was made to be at that level and distributed as such to the masses to make them attainable. So these are resin pieces that were done in 1966 by Curtis Jerry. I absolutely love them. They kind of remind me of like lollipops. And again, another pop of color. Everything has color in this house, except for the walls. So these two pieces were actually, I found also at an antique shop here in New York that they just spoke to me. The color of them, they're actually from an unlisted artist. I have no idea who the artist is. They're definitely from the 1950s. And actually it's individual pieces of masonite tile that were put together to create the design. They came as a pair. I had to have them as a pair. And I love them just displayed one on top of the other to kind of just give a nice little splash of color, a nice little design on the wall. Again, because we're talking about walls that are just white, so we can showcase all the artwork. The blanket that this is on, that is actually a vintage Pendleton blanket. So it's, I think, from the 1960s. And I actually found it from a dealer in Arizona. And I've purchased a lot of things from her over the years because she has a very, very good eye for color and form and texture. And this just lent itself perfectly to this room. Now we'll move on to the sofas, the chair, and the ottoman. These pieces, I can't speak enough about. They're designed by a company called Bassam Fellows. It was a company that was established in 2003 by Craig Bassam and Scott Fellows. Craig is actually an Australian architect. They live up in New Canaan, Connecticut, and I think they also have a place here in New York. We carried these at Design Within Reach, and when these were introduced, my mouth dropped. And one of the reasons why was because it had this very simple mid-century modernist aesthetic and profile, but it was the most sturdy, it was the sturdiest piece of furniture that I ever sat in. And I also wanted a piece of furniture to sit in rather than lounge in a living room. I liked having a sort of proper living space as opposed to a space where you can just lounge in. That's what this room is. This is a sofa called the Tuxedo sofa, the club chair, which this is also part of the collection as well, and then the ottoman, which is also part of the collection. It's quilted cashmere wool. And I thought, oh my God, why am I getting a cashmere wool sofa? We have had this sofa for 13 years. You would never know that this sofa was 13 years old. And we have had countless parties here. People all over these sofas, climbing, sitting on the arms, sitting all over the place. And they still hold their form. They're just the most beautiful, the most simple, and yet sticking to the ethos of what Bassam Fellows is, which was bringing classic modern design to the masses. And that's what I love about this. And then I've accented with these pillows and also with the, again, Ritva Puatila textile on the back as the blanket, because I like pops of color. And those are made of baby alpaca, absolutely lovely, so soft and lovely, and just in the most beautiful colors. The coffee table is what I like to say vintage Jonathan Adler. I think the reform screens that are behind me, same thing, they're vintage. Jonathan Adler has been around for long enough where you can say that he has vintage pieces now, and I love that. The coffee table is actually designed it's from the same collection as the screen, so it's actually part of the Temple Reform collection. But it's done in this beautiful brass that has been patinaed over many years. When we got the table, it actually was a bright brass, and I just love the way it's patinaed. It's so pretty and so unique and unusual, and also, again, fitting with the brutalist aesthetic, which I love. These candle holders are actually from a Danish designer named Lord Lomborg. They, again, are very unique, very different. I like the kind of cage aspect to it, but I also like the function and the form of it. The leather boxes are Adler as well. And then this piece I really love, and I have the bud vase actually over here, but this was actually a Costa Boda piece, which is a Swedish glass and crystal manufacturer. And this was designed by a gentleman named Oe Sandborg, and I'm probably ruining that name, even though I'm Swedish. But nonetheless, I just fell in love with this. I actually bought this from a dealer in the UK who had this, the bud vase, and a big bowl, and I missed out on the bowl. But I got this, and I got the bud vase, and I just think it's so unusual and so different and so lovely. So now we've seen everything going up from the floor. Let's look at what's on the floor. So the floors themselves, these are actually the original floors. This building is actually 100 years old. So these are maple and with a cherry border. And when we moved in here, the floors hadn't been updated, or nothing had been done to them probably for about 30 or 40 years. And they had yellowed. There was quite a bit going on, a lot of scratches just with use over the years. So the first thing we did was we said, let's redo the floors while we don't have any furniture in. Much easier to do it than when we have furniture in here and then we have to move things all around. So we did that, and instead of actually doing a dark walnut stain, which was originally what I wanted to do, we actually decided to do this lighter. This is technically a medium walnut stain. We didn't use the wetting technique of wetting the floors before you actually saturated it with the stain, which actually brings the color deeper. We used just a dry application of it so that we could really showcase the wood and the grain of the wood. And my husband didn't like the darker floors, and so I thought, okay, this is probably a good compromise where we can actually still see the grain that he wants to see, and also we have a little bit of a darker floor as well. And then we did about a 20% sheen on it. So it's more like an eggshell or a satin type finish. The rug, which is not really a rug, it's actually a mat, was actually designed by Chilowich. I loved this piece because it's not a classic mat. It's totally organic shaped. This was a form that they actually did for Design Within Reach specifically. I got rid of my old ones years ago, and I contacted Chilowich and I said, hey, do you still have the stencils or the drawings for the organic mats that you did for Design Within Reach? Some lovely person at Chilowich went and found them, and they customized these for me again. And so we have one in here and we have one in our spare room. But again, I just love the fact that it's not a square, it's not a rectangle, it's not round. It's a complete organic design. And also the textile that was used is made to emulate a sort of mid-century feel. sort of a melange linen feel, if you will. This piece is actually another fitting with our sun theme. This is a piece from Alexander Gerard. Again, the same guy who did the Mexican folk art dolls, prolific designer, creative director Herman Miller. Vitra actually licensed this. This was an original from I think it was 61 or 62. I just love this. I love the sun. I love the smiley face. There's just something very inviting about it. And it also doubles as a mirror. So it's fantastic. The thing I loved about it the most was that in New York City, you often have very limited space. And in this apartment, yes, space is still limited, but it is a pre-war apartment, and there are some finishes and some architectural aspects to this apartment that really lent itself to be designed properly. For example, we have a foyer. Not all people have an entryway or a foyer. I love it. I hate walking into an apartment where you just walk right into a kitchen or into a living room. There is just nothing worse, in my opinion, than doing that. I like to have a place where you can greet people and have a discussion and then welcome them into other parts of your apartment. Obviously in this room, it is a combination dining and living space, but we do a lot of entertaining. And so it lends itself very nice to having food displayed and out for people, and then also have seating area for everyone. We also host an annual Passover Seder for our family. We have 12 to 13 people, sometimes 15 people in this apartment. We've had it in smaller apartments in the past. It's just a really lovely space to meet and convene. And then the 2 bedrooms, we wanted to have a space that was not only a guest room, but also an office for my husband. And I needed an office as well, so that we both have office space and desk space. We both work from home primarily, but also have a space that's just really lovely and comfortable and calm and nice to be in and work in, and also live in as well. So this is our primary room, and this textile here, I just absolutely fell in love with. It's from the mid-century, it's Swedish, fits with my heritage. I had this made out of a very large piece of yardage. These, again, fit with the theme of the sun. Everything in this apartment fits with some sort of theme of a sun, and it just makes me feel warm and comfortable and lovely. And the colors were great. This door is a French door, obviously, and the French door was on this particular room. Unique story about this particular room, this was actually the living room of the apartment next door. And so this was a very large bedroom by New York City standards because of that, because we actually took from the living room next door. Now, we didn't personally do that. This was done many years ago. So this was on this room because it was part of the living room. And so we had another French door put on the other bedroom to match that, and also to match the textile as well. It's not only our bedroom, but it also is my office. So this is where all the magic happens. This is Daniel House Club East in New York City, this little desk right here. Our company is actually headquartered in Portland. I'm the only one here in New York City. We have one person in upstate New York. We have another person in North Carolina. But I am the only person here. So this is the little desk that I work from every day. I absolutely love it. This system, this shelving system, was actually designed by Paul Kodovius. And this is a licensed reproduction of the original design. Very simple, walnut, brass accents. Super simple design, but extremely functional, and it just looks lovely. So we have a vast array of books from both myself and my husband. This sculptural piece was actually my great uncle's, and he loved it, and I just think it's very cool and different. And then this is a piece that I had to actually have redone recently because it had broken during a move. And I took it to a metalworker in Rochester, and he put it back together again fitting with the sort of mid-century modern aesthetic and brutalist aesthetic as well. So I also love diminutive art. This piece of artwork, this tiny little rectangular piece of art I found in Palm Springs, I absolutely loved it and had to have it. And then these small pieces come from a variety of different sources. Some of them are vintage, some of them are new. There's a ceramic studio in London that actually showcased their work at the Whitney about 2 or 3 years ago. And I bought some of their diminutive pieces here, which I really loved. And then we also have a few other pieces, some very small Murano pieces, Murano glass. These lucite pieces, which are pop art from the 60s. These pieces, which I really love, which are classic tops that you spin, Herman Miller did those. And they were a limited edition that they did. And again, I just had to have them. I thought they were very cool. A couple of things related to my work area. I sit in an Eames executive chair. This is the Time Life executive chair. I love this chair. This is not vintage, actually, but it is currently about 15 years old. I had it upholstered in metallic dream cow. That's the name of the leather. That was an Edelman leather, a little nod to John Edelman. And it's gotten just a little beat up over the years, but I actually like the fact that it's got beat up. It just shows that I actually love it and I use it all the time. So, and it actually stayed upstate for a couple of years while we were living in a much smaller apartment before we bought this place. So it's been all over the place. And I've had it, like I said, for about 15 years. And I absolutely love it. Classic design and extremely comfortable, believe it or not. Moving over to kind of the view. This lamp piece I just want to talk about very briefly. It was actually designed by a guy named Sven Agi Holm Sorensen. Well, it's a mouthful. Danish guy. He did what they call luminaires, or small light sculptures. This I bought from a dealer up in upstate New York, and I had to have it. I know I say that a lot, but it just was a very unique piece and also quite delicate. And I liked that it was the kind of function of the lamp, but it was also an ambient lamp rather than a directional lamp as a desk lamp. And it gives off a nice warm glow, which is really lovely. And then this piece I actually bought just recently, which is a old-fashioned calendar, and I just love it. I love the baked enamel, the copper with baked enamel. You'll see a couple of different things. This is the same, the clock here. And then also there's a couple of other pieces that we have that are baked enamel on copper as well. This is my husband and I. This was actually at our wedding in San Francisco in 2008. And this piece is actually from a really great Danish artist who did etchings in charcoal and ink. And I bought this from a company called Lost Art Salon, which is actually out in San Francisco. They specialize in a lot of very rare pieces of artwork that are on a smaller scale. They have larger scale artwork as well, but I like that it's sort of fit to a city urban living. So this corner of the room, I kind of wanted it to just be a seating area where we could just lounge around if we wanted to, if we're not wanting to just lay around in bed. We have a seating area that's separate from my desk. This chair is an Eames chair. It's a classic design, but this has a little modern take on it. This was actually done by Hay Company, which is a Danish company, in conjunction with Herman Miller. And then also this piece of artwork, which is on the easel, is from an artist in the mid-century named Raoul Cornell. He's a Mexican-American artist. He primarily specializes in being a sculptor, but these are mosaic tiles that he put onto a burlap background. And my good friend and I, who is an interior designer, we actually made the walnut frame ourselves. So it doesn't detract from the piece. I think it actually adds to the piece. And I love the fact that we can still showcase the imperfections in the burlap and also still showcase all of the mosaic tiles as well in their really lovely color. So one of the things that really attracted me to this apartment was the fact that we had a view of water in New York City, which is unheard of. And I walked into this place. There were bars on the windows were filthy. Nobody had lived here in quite some time. And I just looked out the window and I felt like I was on top of the water. And I told my husband, I found the apartment. This is it. If I can just look out and look at water and look at sunshine kind of beaming off the water, it is so therapeutic. And my husband feels the same way. And he has equally a stunning view from the spare room of water as well. And it just gives you kind of an instant calming, relaxing presence. All right, so here's the bed. Here's the big king bed, which you don't really get a lot in New York City apartments. We had a queen size bed for years. It's so nice to be able to have a huge bed in a New York City apartment. This furniture actually, so the bed frame, the nightstands, the tall dresser, and also the small dresser, the low dresser, they were actually done by a company called Copeland Furniture out of Vermont. They're all handmade, walnut. They were done for Design Within Reach as an exclusive called the American Modern Collection. And they were emulating what George Nelson did for Herman Miller. And I really just lopped onto it and fell in love with it. And again, we've had this furniture as long as we've had the sofa, so for about 13 years, and it is just resilient. Scratches, bumping, moving, the whole 9 yards. Just, it is the most resilient piece of furniture, all of these pieces, that I think we've had since the sofa. The lamps are actually by a company called Hudson from the mid-century. They're from the 1960s, early 1960s. One of these lamps was actually in a pile underneath a table with no lampshade, nothing. I just saw the form of it and it was filthy dirty. And you can also see there's a little bit of a patina around where the brass is, which I love. And I just picked it up and it didn't have a price tag on it. I brought it to the cash wrap and I said, how much do you want for this? And they said $75. And I said, I will take it. I didn't know anything about the lamp. I hadn't done any research about the lamp. Come to find out, these lamps are actually quite expensive, and they're by a lamp company called Hudson from the mid-century. They were designed by a guy named Stuart Ross James, and I liked the fact that these were just really obnoxiously large, thin, and tall lamps for our nightstands. The screen is also Jonathan Adler, so it is not vintage. However, it was based on a vintage design. It's called the Trocadero screen by Jonathan Adler. The one thing that I really loved about it was it's basically two doors and it's hinged together. So you can have this be sort of like a sculpture, like we have it behind our bed, but you can also have it be a screen in a room to section off an area. And these colorful glass inserts, which I think are just beautiful. They're not primary colors, so I'm probably gonna, go against my grain of not having a primary color here, but it's extremely colorful. And I just love that they were not uniform. They were very organic in their form and structure. This lamp was done by the same ceramicist and lamp company as the one that's in our entryway. Jane and Gordon Martz Marshall. So Martz Lamps, Marshall Studios. Again, I've never seen this lamp before. You see a lot of different Martz lamps that have similar structure, similar style, similar form. I've never seen this lamp again. And I did have this shade made for it because the shade that it came with was in really, really poor shape. These vases are Batozzi from the mid-century. This was actually one that we had at Design Within Reach. It's a licensed reproduction of the exact item. This is an original, and I bought this at auction through Rego Arts and Auctions in Lambertville, New Jersey. And I think we have the only CD player in the house here as our alarm clock, which is a Tivoli Audio. So we can still play CDs if we want to. I know that's kind of a Gen X thing, but I'm solidly a Gen Xer. So the mirror is a Macabre mirror. Paul Macabre, the guy who did the not the nightstands, but the end tables in our living room. Same guy, lovely burlap, painted burlap, and then a lovely just black alderwood frame. Mirror, very simple. I wanted to have something that reflected the view of where we were at and also made it so it looked like the room was a little bigger, even though we have a great bedroom. This piece over here is actually a Harris Strong tile, mosaic tiles. I found this, gosh, I think it was in upstate New York at an antique dealer. Actually, it was the same guy who I purchased many different things from, including the artwork of Eric Bellman's that's in our entryway. This is also from the 1950s, and we just really liked it because it kind of looked like somebody getting dressed or ready, so we put it near our closets. The two closets, obviously because this room was a living room, it wasn't a bedroom when this building was made, these were added after the fact. We did not add them, but they were added years ago. And our realtor, he was saying, well, you could just make this a large closet. And I thought, yeah, that might not be a bad idea. But then the more I thought about it, I thought, I want to stick with what we have here. And I like kind of having a his and his closet. So we decided to keep it. So we're going down to the ground. This rug I have coveted this rug for probably 10 years. It's made by Maharam. It's called the multi-tone rug. And I just bought it recently. What I liked about this rug was that, first of all, it fit perfectly under the bed and also our nightstands, but it also showcased a lot of the color that we brought to this apartment. And it has every color of the rainbow in it. And it's also not obnoxiously bright and obnoxiously designed. It's just very subtle and beautiful. So I was working in the legal profession. I was selling a lot of furniture. My husband and I had moved from San Francisco to New York City. This was over 20 years ago. And we had a lot of furniture. We moved from a large loft in San Francisco to a small New York City apartment. And we needed to get rid of furniture. And I had sold a whole bunch of furniture. This was back in the day when the only outlet to sell was through Craigslist. I had a lot of photography, a lot of pictures about the different types of furniture that I was selling, and also had pictures of the design of those things in rooms that we had, in apartments that we had. So this one lovely lady kept purchasing the same items from me. I just asked her, I said, you've bought a lot of furniture from me. I said, what are you doing? And she said, well, I'm a collector, and my husband and I just purchased a co-op on the Upper East Side in New York City, and we're getting ready to furnish it. And she asked me, she said, where are the photographs from that you have, that you post your items for sale? Are they from studios? Are they from clients? Are they, whatever? I said, honestly, they're from our apartment. They're from our current apartment and from past apartments that we've had. And she said, well, you have a real talent. You know that you have a real talent. And I said, I like what I do when I am designing. I said, but it's not what I do for a living. And she said, well, you should be doing it for a living. And about 6 months later is when I actually started my own business. She hired me actually to do her apartment, to design and decorate her apartment. And this was my very first project. And I am still friends with these people to this day. It was just a really special project. Anyway, at that time, we finished the project about a year and a half, 2 years after the fact. And then from there, I got a bunch of referrals, not only from her, but also just from people who had seen the work published and on my website at that point. That really was the impetus for really setting forth the way that I kind of design not only my homes moving forward, but also my clients' homes moving forward. All right, so that was the primary room. I want to follow me. Now we're heading into our spare room, which also doubles as an office. I want to talk a little bit about the textiles in this room. The tapestries, the wall tapestries that are behind me, those are actually done by a woman named Evelyn Ackerman, a California artist. I fell in love with these primarily because of the color, but also I wanted some texture on the walls instead of just having artwork. But they, in and of themselves, are art. And so I absolutely love them. I love the scale of them. I love the color. Whenever I'm on a call in here and I have my video on and that's in the background, it always gets a comment. What is that? What are you showcasing there? And then the pillows, these were actually the pillows that I talked about earlier from Jonathan Adler that I had custom made. And I just, again, huge pops of color. I want that because the rest of the room is grounded in sort of neutrals. This piece of artwork that is actually over the bed is a contemporary piece of artwork by a very dear friend of ours, Chris Boja. He's an artist here in New York. He has showed at Art Basel in Miami. He has showed at many different galleries. He also has some public art in New York City. He recently did a commission for the New York City Public Schools. So one of his murals is actually at a public school, a brand new public school. This is a mandala. And the mandala, we actually selected all the colors with him. So we chose the colorways. And then this is a knitting, it's all yarn technique. And he makes these mandalas. I mean, he has ones that are 15 feet wide that he's had in buildings in New York City. This one he made is obviously a smaller piece for us, but my husband commissioned this for me for my 50th birthday. And so we both got to select the colors, and then Chris did the actual artwork, which we love. And then my friend upstate and we actually did the frame for it. And then the poster over here, that's by the nightstand. My third favorite movie is probably Boom, which is with Elizabeth Taylor and Richard Burton from the 1960s. And that's a Polish movie poster, which I found online and had it framed, and just absolutely love it. I think it's so unique and so different, and also very psychedelic, kind of fitting with this theme of 60s psychedelia. And then the colors of the Blanco glass that are on the nightstand go kind of in conjunction with that. And then the portrait artwork that's on the wall next to it, this is actually from Eric Bellman, who is the artist who we have the self-portrait of him and his partner in our entryway. So this is also him and his partner. It's just a little bit more subdued, from the same era, I guess same collection, if you will. But I bought these at different times. And I recently bought this one to match the one that was up in front. And I was fortunate that the dealer in upstate New York still had this piece. And so I'm really, really happy about that. The tension pole lamp is somewhat unique as well. That is actually from a company called Lightalier from the 1960s. It was designed by a guy named Gerald Thurston. And you can have many different types of lights. I have the uplight dish on there, and also a canister downlight, because I like to sit here and I like to read in this chair, which is my womb chair, and it's like the most comfortable chair in the entire apartment. But I can also lounge in it. I can sit however I want to in it. I can have my legs strewn all over everywhere, and I'm 6'3", so my legs go everywhere. And then I can also sit here while my husband works at his desk as well. So it's a multifunction room. This piece of artwork I just briefly want to talk about. It's pretty special to us. It has no pedigree whatsoever. It's actually a puzzle. So my husband had the original set of the Lord of the Rings books, and it was done by a company called Ballantine Books in the 1960s. And he showed me the artwork that was on them, and I thought, wow, that's really cool. It's kind of different. It's kind of dark. It's kind of weird, and also very colorful. So me being the OCD person that I am, I go out onto the internet and I find this puzzle which has the exact replica of the imagery that's on the books. And so he and I did this puzzle together, and then I took it to my framers on the Upper East Side and had them frame it. And so that always hangs near his desk. It's something that he loves. He also loves plants, which I'm not a huge plant person because I don't have a green thumb, but he does, and he loves plants. So we have lots of plants in here, and he likes to have that when he's on calls. Sometimes we put the plant over here. Sometimes we put it on the desk. Just depends where we want it. And then last but certainly not least is this mobile. I actually found through Rob Forbes, who was the founder of Design Within Reach. And he was visiting their studio in Mallorca, Spain. And I absolutely fell in love with it, and I liked it. And I said, hey, this is really cool. And he then put me in contact with the studio directly. And I thought, that's very, very cool. And then come 2 months later, we have something in our home. And I just love it. It's so cool. It adds a certain element of texture to the room. It also adds depth to the room. And I put it over the Nesson lamp, which is an orange lamp. It kind of gives this orange glow. At night, it's really pretty. And when we get a nice cross breeze through here, which is quite often, the mobile actually starts to spin around and gives some form to the room as well. And so it kind of acts as like a kinetic sculpture, which is very, very cool. Be original. Have original designed pieces. Don't just buy something that you can purchase off of Instagram. Have something that means something, that has a history behind it, that has a story behind it. There's craftsmanship behind it, as I mentioned earlier. These are the important things. We foster the people who actually make good design. And we really, at Design Within Reach in particular, that was our ethos. We lived by that motto. So every piece of furniture, every decor item that we sold it had a story and it was an original design by an artist. Whether it was a licensed reproduction that is based on the original design, or if it was an actual original design. First thing when you walk into the apartment is our foyer, it's our entryway. We really had a very clear vision of what we wanted this space to be. We wanted it to be a gallery space. We had the apartment completely white boxed paint-wise. I did that for a very specific reason. Most galleries, at least back in the day, were a slight off-white, and it was to showcase the artwork. That is what we wanted to have happen here. A couple of things I just wanted to point out. This piece of artwork is actually from a gay artist from Rochester, New York, named Eric Bellman, from the mid-century. This was actually from the 1960s. This is actually a self-portrait of him and his partner. And I found this in a antique shop in Buffalo, New York. And you'll see I have a companion piece of artwork as well from the same artist that's actually in our spare room. I just absolutely love this piece. First of all, because it kind of reminded me of my husband and I. Blonde, well, I can say that I'm blonde, but I'm not really blonde anymore. I'm white. But blonde hair, dark hair. My husband has dark hair. So it just kind of evoked that feeling of both he and I. This other piece of artwork, this actually we bought in Israel when we visited Israel in 2010. It was at a market in Jaffa, Israel, which if nobody's been to Israel or to Tel Aviv, Jaffa is a very large market where you can buy everything from, rugs to home furnishing items to paintings. And so this was actually tucked away in the back of a antique shop. It was just a storefront at the market, and it was in an old rickety frame. And there was, again, just something about this particular painting that spoke to me. I love the colors. You can see the similarities between these two pieces of artwork, just in their form, in their function, in their design. I just love the fact it was two women sort of working, doing something. And I had this reframed. So I took it out of the original frame and had this reframed. I love it. My husband and I picked this out together, which is also something that was really special. Because me as the interior designer, I tend to purchase things and tell him after the fact. I've gotten better about that. This was something that we actually purchased together and we found together, and we really love it. The lamp in the entryway was also something that was really important to me to be a focal point. This lamp, even though it looks like a regular old lamp, a regular old table lamp, it actually has a history behind it. It's from the 1950s. It was actually designed by a husband and wife team called Jane and Gordon Martz Marshall. Jane Marshall was from the Marshall family, which actually owned a ceramic lamp company in Indiana going back to the 1920s. Her grandmother actually started the company. And then her and her husband met at the New York State University at Alfred and studied ceramics together. And it was kind of like this perfect marriage of literal marriage and marriage of somebody who was a ceramicist, as well as another person who was a ceramicist who also came from this unique background in ceramic lamps. And so this lamp I actually found through a dealer on First Dibs that was here in New York. And I just fell in love with it. It was the perfect size, and I just love it. And the table that it's on, this is actually a George Nelson table made by Herman Miller. Again, the size of the thing, I really wanted not a large console table for the entryway. I wanted this space to be an area where we met folks who were coming into the apartment and sort of a greeting spot. So it wasn't just this large piece of furniture that was here. This is actually is form and function. So, we have little drawers that pop out here. It's our catch-all for keys, for our wallet, for everything. This table really just spoke to me. It's a perfect size. It's a little small, but I actually like the fact that it's smaller because then it lends itself to this larger area as being a gallery space. This painting, was actually by a prominent African-American artist named Berenice Reed. She lived to be 106 years old, from Washington, D.C. Some of her artwork was actually at the Corcoran Gallery at the National Gallery. Again, I actually bought this from a vintage antique dealer in Washington, D.C. who told me the story behind it. And again, I just fell in love with it. Something about it just spoke to me. It's very textural. And then the piece above it is brutalist art from an artist named Robert Finn. I am a huge fan of brutalism. There's a story behind this lamp, just like there's a story behind everything in this apartment, it seems. A lot of the aesthetics that I chose for this apartment were based actually on a movie. One of my favorite movies is Rosemary's Baby. What I liked about that movie was they lived in the Dakota, which is a German revivalist building, absolutely gorgeous, prolific piece of architecture in New York City. And they kind of brought in a more modern aesthetic to it. They also painted all the walls white so they could showcase the actual furniture, the artwork. So this lamp is actually from Visual Comfort. I purchased it through Daniel House Club, through my company. It just spoke to me. It looks exactly like the lamp that's in the hallway in the movie Rosemary's Baby. It has the same function. It looks, the form of it is exactly the same. It gives off a nice glow. I have this on a dimmer, as I do all of the lights, any overhead light, because I don't really like overhead light. But this is just so simple and also yet fills the space with not only physical space, but also with light, and light that is not directional. It's completely ambient, which I love. So right off the main entryway in the foyer to the apartment is the kitchen. When I came and saw this apartment, I fell in love with this kitchen. I know it doesn't look like anything. To me, it was phenomenal. It had the original cabinets. You can see all of the glazing on the windows. It has that sort of droopy effect, the wavy effect to the glass. Yeah, there's a lot of paint on them. You can see years of painting that people did. There's gouges here and there, but there was something about this kitchen in its state when I saw it that I just really loved. And so what we tried to do was basically have one side of the kitchen be modern, which is this side, and the other side stick to the vintage kind of design and aesthetic of the apartment and of the building itself. And so tons of cool little features. So these little latches, for example, each of the cabinet doors have these latches on them. Again, not in the best of shape, but this is going to be our project for spring. So again, maybe Homeworthy comes back to see this kitchen. Very cool thing, breadboard. All these nice little design aesthetics that were part of apartments and homes back in the 1920s, 1930s, even into the 50s and 60s that aren't there anymore. And then this little, sort of indent here for a microwave. We didn't have a microwave, and I was rather adamant about not having a microwave when we moved in here. But then I quickly realized that we kind of had to have some modern things in here for modern living. We had this built with a dishwasher as well, the work table, which we had in here, so we kind of matched the butcher block for those. And then we brought in new appliances. We got these delivered last year. My mother was very, very kind and actually had them delivered for us. So they were a gift, which I just still blows my mind. And I love them. I love them because they still fit with the sort of vision for this kitchen right now, which is modern, vintage. And also we have these shelves, the stainless steel shelves, which are industrial shelving. And we have a lot of our accoutrement that we use for entertaining. We have our cookbooks, a whole slew of things. And I like to have everything visible. And I think that was something that was really important to us with not only the glass cabinets, but also with the open shelving concept. So we could actually see what we're looking at, what we're pulling from, and just know where everything is at. And I know you kind of have to have things look nice when you have that. So it does take a little bit of upkeep, but I really like that. And I like the ability to kind of just see everything when you walk into the room. The flooring actually is the subflooring. This is not even the original flooring. It's pine, so it's different than the maple and cherry floor that we have in the apartment. And when we moved in here, the floor was in, again, really bad shape. Once we put stain to it though, I thought, wow, this is really gorgeous. And so we decided to actually keep just the subflooring for now until we do a full renovation on the kitchen, which will probably be a while. I think we're gonna focus more on the bathroom and get that back to some sort of shape, and then focus on the kitchen, because the kitchen is very functional and it's also very warm and inviting. And as with any party that you have, this tends to be where everybody congregates, even though we have a very large living room. But for some reason, this is just a comfortable space for people. A couple of things textile wise, the textile here, that's the skirt for the sink, also the sash for the pantry, and the cafe curtains. Those were actually made from a shower curtain, believe it or not. The reason I did that was because my husband likes to have things on his fingers when he cooks, and he gets fingerprints everywhere. And so I thought, you know, we need to have something in here that we can just pop into a washer and dryer, iron it out, have it look nice again, and just be done. I like the color, again, bold colors. We're going with, you know, the yellows, the oranges, the blues, and I think it just I like the matchiness aspect of it because it kind of ties the whole room in with each other. We still have the original farm sink, which is very cool. And I love that it also has this little drying rack area on the side because I can use that for food prep, or if I'm washing dishes, same thing. And a lot of New York City apartments have the water meters inside the kitchens, especially pre-wars. So even though it's not very sightly, it still is very aesthetic to the era of the apartment. And I just really loved it. What home means to me encompasses a lot of different things. Home to me is not just a domicile that I live in. I think I talked about this a little bit at the beginning when we were looking at this apartment house, when we were looking for just apartments in general here in New York. We wanted to have a community. I love living in close quarters with other people. It makes me feel safe. It makes me feel comfortable. It makes me feel part of a community. It forces me to interact with people, which I love. And I also just really enjoy the aspect of being in a cooperative environment. We live in a co-op. We just have to make sure that all of us who are shareholders within the building can actually afford to run and manage this building as well. And that gives me a lot of personal satisfaction. It gives me a lot of responsibility and accountability to make this place something that not only my husband and I love, but that also our neighbors enjoy coming into and enjoying, and people who are visiting. So I think that is really the aspect of home, the concept of home that I really like. And of course, the decor and furniture and things like that are sort of ancillary to that. But the concept of home to me is really having a community. And this building in particular is a community that is so diverse. We have, older folks, younger folks, single folks, married folks, children, all different ethnic backgrounds. I love that aspect of this building. And I can't say that about every building necessarily here in New York that we looked at. There was a feel that I got when I got to this building, and that my husband got as well, that we just felt like this was home, and we knew it.
Thanks for watching. Go to homeworthy.com for exclusive content and shopping guides.